Okay, thank you everyone for coming to Tech Tutor Get Organized. I believe this is the second Get Organized talk. And the first one was very well received, so we decided to do a second one. We have Larry Edison back. He is our in-house tech expert. He is here every Monday for one-on-one tech appointments. So if you ever have any, desire to learn this or that, consider giving us a call and we can try setting you up with that. He does a great, fantastic job with that. He's been with us for over 2 years. And we really, really appreciate him here. He's also delivered many excellent programs. And today he's talking about how to organize. We were talking about, I've been talking with a lot of people here about, keeping your computer organized with your files and your folders and things like that. So, I think it's going to be, a very helpful topic. So with that, Larry, I'm going to hand it off to you.
All right, and I'm going to share my screen and assume everybody can see this. I hope. Give us a thumbs up if you can see the screen. The slides, good. So one of the things that you need to know before I introduce myself is that the whole idea of getting your digital life organized is an oxymoron to a certified, treated ADD person like me whose insides are scattered all over the place. But that's why I love the idea of getting all my stuff organized, because it helps my brain make sense. So we're going to talk about organization. I wish I was an IT expert. I only have a bit of expertise in some areas. I retired when I was 60 after a full career and decided I wanted to do something else. So I stayed in Sarasota and worked for Computer Advantage, which is an Apple Premier Partner store. They have a store in Sarasota and two in Georgia. I was hired to be a teacher, a trainer, as well as a salesperson. So having to be Apple certified meant that I had to study and figure out all this IT stuff. And I've had a blast being able to share my knowledge with others. If you need to get a hold of me, this is an address that should get your email to me. I'm glad to answer, or at least try to answer, any of the questions that I raise. So, where do we begin on a topic that really is quite detailed, but I have to make it understandable? I want to begin with this Twitter feed that I saw the other day. I don't get the Washington Post, but apparently they advertise on Twitter. And here was this headline: how they organize their iPhones will inspire you. So the very fact that they had a topic on how to organize your iPhone tells you this is a hot topic. It's huge, and people want to know, how do they get their digital life organized? That particular blurb is talking about something like this. So here's an iPhone screen, but it could just as well be an Android. And you notice you have apps. That's one of the apps. You see the red arrow, an Alexa app. But notice the yellow arrow pointing to not an app, but a number of apps in miniature. That's actually a folder that I have labeled house. So you have apps and you have folders, and you can organize them whatever way you want. And that's the concept we're going to be talking about today. And that's precisely the problem. What do we do with all our stuff? You receive email, you've downloaded something, people send you pictures, you've received PDFs, maybe even videos. How do you get it organized? And more important, the idea is, how can you find it once it's been downloaded or saved on your computer? So we're going to talk about this problem. What do we do with our stuff? So that brings me to the very beginning. What is a file? On Mondays, when I come in as a volunteer tutor, I can't tell you how many people have asked me, what is a computer file? How do I know if I have a file? So it's a question that's out there. So let me give you kind of a wordy definition. First of all, a computer file, the stuff that we need to organize, is information. You can see some of the types of information there. It's information that was created by an app, or it's information that actually contains an app. We store it nowadays on a chip or on a disk. So the information we receive that's a computer file, we have to put it somewhere. And this information can be modified or saved or deleted. That's why we have to be careful with it. We don't want to accidentally delete something that really is important or contains information that's important to us. So here's an example of the idea of a file. So I'm going to the doctor's this afternoon, and the doctor is going to say to me, we need to update your chart. We need to update your file. Well, what is that? When the doctor wants to update my file, he either pulls up, as you see a picture here, of a clipboard or a computer file, and asks me all kinds of information about myself. And that's stored. It's stored either as a piece of paper or it is stored on a computer. And that detailed information about me and my health and my background is a file. In the old days, you can see a video recorder that's stored files, in this case, videos, movies. But there's also CD-ROMs. Those stored any information you wanted, everything from medical charts to TV programs, you name it. So in the old days, we had files, they were just stored on something different. These are the most common files. You can see it in front of you. You've probably all heard of PDF, portable document formats. That's the most common file that we're sent so that we don't have to send each other Word files or something that'd be easily changed. So the question is, what do we do with them? Where do we store these files that people give us or send us? And the answer is in a folder. So that brings us to the question, if we know what files are, if files are pieces of information stored on our computer, where do we put them? In folders. So here's an example of me and my Files app. And I have my arrow pointed at this folder that says iPad class. You can see there's 9 items in that folder. So there's 9 items I've placed in a folder called iPad class. And you can see up and down. For Dade County, I have 2 items, and on it goes. So here's folders, but here's files that aren't held by folders. So I'm a little bit inconsistent how to have all my files in folders. So a folder is a repository. It's a place to place your files. That helps us get organized. So files and folders, literally, just like a filing cabinet. That's what your computer is. This is probably the way that your computer looks on the inside now. Files and folders, willy-nilly, who knows where my stuff is? There's somewhere in there. If you work hard enough, you can find it. But to breathe easier, this is what your computer can be. Well-organized file drawers containing what we used to call manila folders or hanging folders in which we store our files. So believe it or not, your computer is simply one large filing cabinet. That's the way we're going to approach it to help us get organized. And that filing cabinet, if you dig into it, if you open the drawers, contains folders and files. And depending on the app, as you see here, the folders might be called something different. Now, I've oversimplified it, so this isn't totally true, but for the most part, on our Windows or Macs, folders can be called labels. They can be called lists, albums, you name it. So there's all kinds of different names for these repositories that function as folders. How do you get into your filing cabinet? How do you get into your drawer so that you can see your files in your folders? Well, it depends on what kind of computer you have. Notice up here, if you have a Mac, the way that you get into your file cabinet is using Finder. If you have a Windows computer, you have something called File Explorer. used to be called Windows Explorer. If you have an iPad or an iPhone, well, and even if you have an Android, you have something called files. So there's ways to open up those file drawers. This is the way you do it using this app called Finders or Files. All of your computers are probably already divided into this. The most common computer folders, your desktop, documents, downloads, and pictures or photos. So those are the most common computer folders. The most common mail folders are inbox, important drafts. You can see it in front of you. So there's folders for your computer stuff, and there's mail folders that contain any emails that you want to store because they're important. Problem is, we generally don't have a plan. We don't have a plan for what our files and folders are going to be. So most of us don't have any structure, but we search. So for example, if you're using a Mac, you have something called search, and you can look for that file that you might remember that you stored it 2 or 3 days ago. It was a picture of your grandchildren or a file you downloaded because you're going to be traveling. If we don't know where we've stored it, we can click the search and type the file name. Problem is, we have to remember what we named it in order to be able to search for it. This is called Windows Spotlight. It's the way you can search for anything if you don't know where it is. Windows has the same thing. So you can see this magnifying glass, and in gray you search for, as you see, documents, any of the files that you've saved. You can see that search also on the bottom of your Windows taskbar. You click that, you can type in the name of the item that you're searching for. But in my opinion, there's a better way. Let's get some structure onto your gadget so that you know where to place things so they're sorted properly. The idea of files and folders is the idea of grouping. So I want to create a folder structure that's grouped by topics that make sense to me. What kind of content does this file hold? And by the very nature of that content, what topic does it get filed under? It's just like you're using a computer cabinet. So here's an example of some folders that I have. I have folders called receipts. Sometimes I need to keep receipts. Documents, family, friends. Anything related to family, I'll place in that folder. And actually, in my case, I have folders within folders. So in family, I'll put a folder with my wife's name, with my son, with my daughter, so that I can sort exactly the way I want. And I don't have to remember names. I can, if I know I just sent something to my son, but I have to look at what I sent him, I can go into family and then into Nathaniel, and there it is. This is the typical computer screen. It's a desktop and it's just full of stuff, and who knows where the stuff is. In theory, it's just not a good way to keep all your files. Again, this is the way you want to think about your computer folders. Think of your computer as a way you can organize into family, friends, bills, travel, taxes, housing, hobbies, you name it. Build the structure you want so that you know where you can put the items that are important to you. My suggestion is do it on paper first. Get a pencil and paper out and write down the structure that makes sense to you. Okay? And as I said, these are examples of the way that I have structured mine. So here's how it looks on your computer. This is my Mac, a picture of my Mac. And I've opened my address book. You can see inside all the folders. I have family, food, friends, harbor, highlands, medical, you name it. So in my contacts, if I'm adding somebody new, I like to categorize them. So here, for example, is JCC. So if somebody emails me a question, I mean, if I need to put a contact's name, if they're from the JCC, I'll drag their name over to JCC. So if I can't remember who I'm looking for, I can click JCC and see a list of all the people who I've contacted from the J. All right? So the idea of mail is the same thing, not just contacts, but in mail, I want to put any saved email into the proper cabinet, into the proper folder. So if I get an email from my doctor, I want to, and I think that's important, I want to file that in my medical folder. We're getting ready to do a bit of traveling. Anything that I receive in my email about that trip, I file in travel. Here are some of my email folders. So you can see my emails are on the right. Whoops. My emails are on some of the right. And I can drag these into technology, family, friends, church, you name it. So again, you can see part of my file structure. If you use Gmail, your folders, long story short, are called labels. So again, you can see if I'm opening my email, I have a label for Apple training, customers, documents, finance, you name it. So you can make any label you want, and you can file your emails under that label. Same thing with Yahoo and even Google Drive. If you've heard of Google Drive, it's a place where you can store if you have a Gmail address. And you can see there's some folders that make sense to me. These folders are places where I store documents or PowerPoints that I have created. So notice in my Google Drive, I go to the folder called the J. And under the J, I have all these different files that I've created. So I don't have to remember the name of these things. I just have to know where did I use them. I can go to my drive and J, and there they are. The same with my Finder, my Mac. I've opened up Finder. I've gone to the J folder, and in the J folder, here I have more folders and files. So here's my talk today, and I filed it under the J, which is on my Mac. So if I want it, I don't have to remember the exact name. I just go to the J folder. On a Mac, you have to make sure you turn on in preferences your folders so you can see them in the sidebar. So if you have a Mac, you don't need to do this on a Windows machine. If you have a Mac, go to Finder, then click Preferences, and then place a check mark next to all the folders that you want to see regularly. This will show up in your sidebar in your Mac's Finder window. So if you're not seeing one of your folders, this is probably why. Whether you have a Mac or a Windows or any machine, you've probably seen, without ever using it, a file menu item called Move To. And Move To means you want to change locations. You want to move your folder, your picture, your file to a different location. So that's what that means. If you're using an iPhone or an iPad or an Android for that matter, how do you get into your file cabinet? There's your file app right there. So if you want to look through your file cabinet, your file structure, or lack thereof, you touch that blue icon. And this is what's loaded. So you can see I've touched my iCloud Drive in my file cabinet, and there's some of my folders, downloads, family and friends, keynotes, you name it. So you can see I have some type of structure. So again, here's an example. I'm in my Finder, in my folder my file app, sorry, I've touched iCloud Drive, I've touched Keynote, and there's my J folder, which contains all of the items that I've written for anybody associated with the J. And once I drill into that J folder, here are some of my files, best practices, Google Drive, you name it. I hope that makes sense. In my Files app, you can see these arrows are pointing to all my different locations. I don't have the ability to store just on my iPad. I can store in iCloud Drive, in Dropbox, in Google Drive, you name it. So each of these locations, well, you can place files and folders in those various locations. You're not limited to files and folders only on your gadget, your phone, or your computer. You can have folders and files in the cloud. Okay. You know what? I've given you a lot of stuff. Let me stop sharing a moment. Let me ask you if you all have any questions. I might get to it, but now's a good place to take a breather. And hopefully you'll see that I'm kind of doing things repetitively in hopes it'll sink in. Sandy?
How do you delete a download from your files folder?
Oh, using what kind of gadget?
iPhone.
On an iPhone, any folder that you want to delete, you should be able to touch and hold, don't let go, and you'll either see a menu pop up, or after you touch and hold for a moment, a menu will pop up, the last item being menu. Sometimes you can swipe from right to left and delete. So you just tried it?
There it is. Yeah. Thank you.
Phew, that was just a test.
It worked.
All right. Any questions while we're taking just a bit of a breather here? Okay. If not, let me go back. Okay. So in the Mail app, how does it work? Here's my inbox. So here's a letter from Susan. Right above it, a letter from Daniel. But if I want to, this is on my iPad or my iPhone, if I want to file that email because it's important to me, first step I do, well, I have to show this side panel. Sometimes you can only see the content. This is the sidebar icon. So if I touch this when I'm looking at my emails, that will open this side panel. Once I do that, I can see folders and files and other things. So my email is highlighted. In order to file it, I can do it a couple ways. I can literally put my finger on or hover my mouse and drag it over to, for example, the JCC. Touch and hold, don't let go, drag it over and drop it when I get on top of the JCC. Or I can make sure the email is highlighted. I can touch the folder icon. So this is supposed to be a manila folder. And when I touch and let go of that, it'll give me two suggestions. Do you want me to move it to important? I never do because that's not clear enough to me. But I do want to move the message. So I touch Move Message. And then I choose the folder. I don't have to drag it. You can literally touch the file folder, choose Move, and touch the folder where I want to store it. I assume some of you have OneDrive. Some of you are Windows people. OneNote. It works the same kind of way. OneDrive is a place, a location where you can store items. So here I am in File Explorer, Windows Explorer. You get there, if you can't find the app, you hold down the Windows key, the Windows Start key, and touch and let go of E. That'll bring up this window. And you can see on the side of this window, I have videos, music. These are pretty standard. And I can store these items. So in pictures, you can see a variety of pictures. Some just loose, some in folders. So again, like Windows Finder, File Explorer gives you the ability to open your file cabinet and see how is it structured and what's in these different folders. And I can choose, by the way, folders on the cloud or folders on this PC. You have your option to start where you want to store. Okay, so here's my File Explorer showing me some of the items that I've stored using Windows Explorer. Okay. On an Android, it's the same kind of thing. You have something called My Files, just like on your iPhone or iPad. Touch My Files, and you'll be able to see your structure. Anytime you're on a computer and you save something, the very first time you saved it, and I can't tell you how many people don't realize this, the computer not only asks for a name, but a location. So if you're creating a document from scratch, and you're saving it for the first time, it's going to come up as Save As, and you need to give it a location, a folder, as well as a name. So when I click Save As, it's not only going to give me a name, but where it's located. So you can see, I click Save As, and it's asking me, do I want to start in OneDrive, or do I want to start somewhere else? So first, you're going to be asked to save where, and then you're going to be asked to save what. So the what and the where are very, very important. And then you click Save. From that moment on, you're not going to be asked to save as, you'll just be asked to save. File save. It's real simple. So how do you create a folder? Well, in your Windows computer, once you're in this task view, once you're in this File Explorer view, you can click File. Under New is the potential for a new folder. So you click File, New, and choose Folder, and you'll be able to create a new folder from scratch. And then you simply have to name it. You can also, for example, I could have hovered my mouse right here and do a right click, and you can choose New Folder. Same on an Apple. So wherever you are in your File Explorer, you can find a little empty space. And if that's where you want to place your information, you right click, New Folder. So how do you file something? We've talked about filing emails. We've talked about creating folders into which you want to place a file. But how do you store a file? 3 ways. Remember I've told you about putting your finger on something and dragging it? That's drag and drop. You can do it with a mouse or with your hand. I've talked to you about the difference between save and save as. Save as gives you the option for a location, but you can also copy and paste something. And as long as it's not too big, that's a pretty easy option. So here I am on a Mac. I'm in Finder. I've touched File, and actually it's, File and then New Folder. And I'm going to give it a location. Here's my right click. And my right click on a Mac, by the way, if your right click doesn't work, you have 2 ways to right click. If you're on a portable, you can click your trackpad with 2 fingers, and that's generally a right click. If you're using a mouse and your right click doesn't do anything different than a regular click, you can hold the control key down and do a click. And a control click is a right click. So you right click, and that gives you the ability to make a new folder. If you're in Mail, folders are called mailboxes. Now, this is an overstatement. It's not quite true, but for our purposes, it's good enough. So if you want to create a folder or a mailbox in Mail on your Mac, you click Mailbox and the New Mailbox. Then you do 2 things, just like a Save As. you give it a location. So you can choose on my Mac, or you can choose the file folder family, or wherever you want it. And you give it a name, and you've created a folder into which you can drag. So this is where you can say on my Mac, and the name of the folder is JCC. So you can, anything that comes in from the J, you can drag over there. Okay? In Safari or in Windows Explorer or Edge, you can do the same thing. I have folders for my bookmarks, so they're not scattered willy-nilly. So if you want to create a folder in Safari, you click bookmarks and then add a bookmark folder. Or in your reminders, same thing, kind of thing. It's called a list. So you can add your list, and into which you can drag whatever you want. So you can see I have a medical list, a medical folder, in which I've dragged 4 items. So my to-do list isn't a million pages long, it's categorized. Here it is in Windows. There's your file new, and you can create whatever folder you want wherever you want it. It's not very clear, but you can see the idea. File new folder. File new folder. Okay. And you can move, and if you use the Windows Mail app, you can see the mail right down the side here. And I can drag those or move those into any folder that I want. So it doesn't matter Windows or Mac. Okay, same kind of thing. In my Mac mail, here's a folder, an email from Daniel. So I've highlighted his email, and I can drag that over to the J. So I've got all my emails located where I want. So that's the idea. There's structure, and within the structure, you have the flexibility to change, move things around anytime you want. The key is being aware of the items you have from various sources. You have attachments from email. You can store the email in a different place than the attachment. You can store the attachment somewhere and the email somewhere. You have tons of flexibility. Let me stop and ask if you have any questions, or if you need me to demo anything. The concept is, do you have the concept of files and folders in mind? So you have built-in storage. And within that built-in storage, you have the ability to create folders into which you can drag your files. Any questions? Martin, go ahead. Did you have a question? Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yes, in my mail, I have folders, but for some reason I've created subfolders. I've created new folders that become subfolders, and I didn't want them to be subfolders. How do I change a subfolder to a regular folder?
Okay, let me just kind of clarify for everybody what you've done, which is what I do regularly. So for example, I have a folder in mail called travel. Under travel, I have other folders, New Zealand, Chicago, Italy, it doesn't matter what's under there, so that I know where anything that has to do with travel is in there. And if I don't have something specific yet, I keep it in travel, but I want those subfolders. If you don't want subfolders, which I'm a big fan of, you grab it with your mouse, drag it up to, like if it's a Gmail, drag it up to where it says Gmail, or up to a line, it should follow you, up to a line that's parallel. A subfolder will be indented. You want to drag it over where it's not indented any longer between 2 other folders. So you drag it between 2 other folders where you'll see a red line go from indent to the same structure level. Or just drag it, as I said, if it's a Gmail or a Yahoo, just drag it to the top folder, which will be called Inbox. And if you drag it to Inbox, it'll become a subfolder of Inbox, not of Travel. So that might be the easiest. So if I were to drag my Chicago subfolder of Travel up to Inbox and let it go, it would become a subfolder of Inbox, not of Travel. And that's what you want.
Right. My big concern is I don't want to lose that file. How do I make sure I don't lose it?
And boy, is that a valid concern. Maybe if you really want to be super careful and not do what I suggested, you make a new folder, call it something a teeny bit different, and since you know how to make that folder structure, and then go to the folder you want to move, open it, drag all the emails out of there into the one you've just created.
Okay.
So you're not moving the folder, you're moving the files from one folder into another. That's a lot safer.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Other questions? We moved really fast. So I'm glad to take any questions on anything. Concepts or how to. All you have to do is unmute yourself. I can't see hardly anybody's video, but just unmute yourself and ask. Whenever somebody asked me the other day if they could send a piece of paper by email, send a document by email. And I said, well, no, you obviously can't send a piece of paper by email. I assume it's not in digital format. And she said, I don't know what digital format means. So think of digital format as that piece of information that you've made that you can store on a computer or an iPhone or any kind of gadget. We've got to have place for that digital stuff that we get. That's why I'm a big fan of putting these digital files into folders. Or if you've downloaded a movie, you don't want movies all over your computer. You want to put them in a folder called Movies. Or if you have photos, you might have a photo folder or album called Grandchildren, or Joe or Tom and Melissa folders, so you can get to them easily. And on a Mac, the folders are called albums. You can file them into the albums the way you want.
Marilyn, looks like you have a question.
Yeah, how can you, let's say if you have something in a folder and you want to send it to somebody as a message on your phone, how can you do that?
Okay.
Well, either something to go across the whole bed and the front of it, but not to.
So, okay, sorry. So how do you send, no, I got distracted, sorry, ADD moment. What was the question again?
Okay, if you have something in a folder, like a picture, and you want to send it to somebody that's on your contact through the message.
Oh, through texting, okay.
Yeah, through texting. How do you do that?
Okay, let me see if I can share my iPad and try to experiment. Okay, so here's a message. And let's say I want to send this graphic Mirowitz Center to somebody. Is that the kind of thing you're talking about?
Yeah, that's what
okay.
yeah.
So some example. I can touch and hold, and that'll give me a menu. So you have a whole bunch of different options. But one of the options that's going to be the easiest is copy.
Okay.
So you're going to hold down, get the menu, touch copy. Now, watch this. I'm going to go to messages and okay, here's message from whatever. Hold it. Okay.
Wow.
See all these different, okay, here's from Petropolis. So I'm going to send them the Mirowitz Center. Touch and hold. And that didn't work. So I'm going to touch and let go. And see where it said paste? Did you
Yeah.
see that? Where it said paste? So if I paste, I was kicking off, I had a keyboard attached, so I can't do it. That will paste right into the
Oh,
message. Let me see if I can do it real quick. Let me unattach the keyboard. See? How
okay.
then there it is in the message. Then I can type any message that I want.
Oh,
Okay. But in this case,
okay.
I don't want to send them anything. So once you get to whatever it is that you want to save, touch and hold, and then this menu will pop up. See how you can save it to files, put it in the folder, or if it's a picture, that's how you save it to Mac's Photos or your iPhone Photos. You'll save it right to your photo app, or you can copy it as we did. One of the dilemmas of a touch screen is that it's so confusing. One touch can do several things. So you can touch and hold, touch and let go, or touch and drag and hold. And they all do something different. Okay, let me stop sharing my. Okay,
A question.
go ahead.
Is that you, Lou?
Lou, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I probably wasn't listening the first couple minutes, but that file menu, how did you get to that file at the beginning?
Sure. Let me share my screen again. So here I am in an email, and I'm going to push the home button. And do you see where this blue file folder on a Samsung, it's different. But if I touch the blue file folder, then I get all my locations, iCloud Drive in this case,
Oh, yeah.
and
I
all the
didn't see-
folders.
What did you touch on from the home page?
From the home page,
Yes.
I touched this Files app.
Where, wait a minute, I can't see it. Where?
You can't see this blue Files app? See my mouse?
Yes,
See, it's hovering over that Files app.
file.
Let me
Is it-
bring it up
is
higher.
that-
There, how about now? Can you see it
Yes, yes.
right here?
I see, that's an app. Okay.
Right, the filing cabinet is an app. And in order to get this side panel, I'm
Yes.
touching this icon up here.
The side panel, okay, great.
And then, of course, to move an app, grab it, move it around and bring it back down to the dock.
I see, thank you.
Oh, hey, Larry, actually, could you try showing the share function too? Kind of like how you were like doing with the Mirowitz logo, because I feel like that's a pretty handy way to do it too for that relates to Marilyn's question.
Okay. All right, let me share my screen. Okay. So in this case, touching the logo, and I can, as you see these options, this share icon is ubiquitous to literally every app. Every app you have on your iPhone or iPad has this option to share. So I can touch the share, and I'm given all kinds of options. So I can, like with my wife's computer, just a few feet from me, I can airdrop that to her. I can send it to these people by message, by text, or I can send it to these different apps. So I could place that logo in my Notes app just by touching Notes. It would share that logo to any of these apps that you'll see here. So for example, I'm on my iPad now. I can share that logo to my iMac just by touching this icon. So the Share app is super, super powerful. When I'm in Pages or Keynote and I want to share my PowerPoint with somebody, I touch Share, and then here's this menu that pops up. So look for that Share icon, that rectangle with the arrow coming out, literally in every app that you'll use. And that's on a Mac, iPad, and iPhone. Other questions? Sid, you have a question? Go ahead.
Yeah, Larry, I've experienced when I've taken an email with an attachment and I've moved it over to a file.
Folder?
I lose the file folder. I lose the ability to be able to recapture that photograph or image.
That's very bizarre, because you should be able to, at any time, as long as that hasn't been corrupted, which filing it doesn't corrupt anything, you should have access to anything. That's part of the problem with, like, if a lot of people file stuff in Gmail and their Gmail's full. How? Because the attachments are still there.
Right. Yeah, for some reason, if someone sends me a photograph and I drag that email and photograph off to the file folder, I lose the ability to open. It's there, but it won't open.
And you've touched and held and it's still not there?
Yep. Yep.
Wow.
Sometimes it says it's loading, but it never loads.
Okay, let me share my screen just to show you that you've got something wrong with your gadget, because normally it'll work. So let me give you an example. Hold on 1 sec.
Okay.
And then I'll give you a suggestion for what to do.
Right.
Okay, so this is in a folder. I don't even know what folder it's called, but it's from my daughter. She sent me this label. And you can see this is an attachment. It's a picture. And this has been, well, since April of 21, it's been filed in a folder. I can still have access to that, and I can move that picture at will and do whatever I want. And as I said, that's been filed for a long, long time. So my suggestion, and I know you've done this already, so it's going to sound stupid at first, is to reboot. So you need to reboot and get that cleaned out. And what app is it actually? What app are you actually using?
It's on Safari, and it's on my desktop, so it's on an iMac.
Oh, you're not talking about Mail. You're talking about, when you say it's in Safari.
Well, if someone sends, I've had the experience where someone has sent me an email with an attached photograph, and I open it, it's fine. When I go to store it under correspondence in a file, I can't open the photograph.
And what email program are you using? Are you just opening Safari and going to a Gmail or something?
Opening Safari and using Mail in Apple.
Okay, now Apple's Mail and Safari are two different programs. You can't access Apple's Mail through Safari. So I'm going to assume you mean your email app just like mine? I showed you on the screen.
Sorry.
Okay.
Right, yeah.
The only way around that is to save the attachments, but that should not be affected one bit. So you've either got a corrupted app, or you need to circle the wagons and save the downloads before. If I were in your shoes, I would call Apple Care and tell them and see if they can find any corruption. 1-800-275-2273. 275-2273. Because there's got to be some corruption if that happens. I've never seen that happen. I can store emails with all kinds of attachments, PDFs, and get them years later.
No, it happens frequently. So what I've been doing is storing the photo as a photo in my photo library,
Right.
and then storing the email.
Right.
And that was 800-275.
2273.
Okay, great. I will
Also,
try that.
did you happen to write down my email address
I think I've got it.
at the beginning? I would love for you to send me a note, and maybe we can Zoom and I can try to investigate the structure you have to see if there's something wrong with the basic layout.
Okay, great.
So just email me and we'll get a date to Zoom.
I have a question.
I'm ready.
Could you, I noticed you said you could do the label, but could you, excuse me, you could do the USP logo, but could you open up the label on your example?
Whatever was, can I open up the label?
That's what that's what I think Sid's trying to do, is open up the label.
As long as the label is a photo or a document, but no, if it's just part and parcel of the email, then no, I can't do that. It has to be a photo or a literal attachment. It can't be something in line.
Okay, thank you.
So that's where you want to look for PDF or DOCX or some kind of format. Okay, other questions?
Go ahead, Sandy.
I opened up one of my files pictures, and there is a video. And it said when I try to open it, we can't open. This may be because the file type is unsupported, the file extension is incorrect, or the file is corrupt. I know what it is. It's a short video of a grandkid. So,
Oh, it's
but
a
I'm
video.
finding it on several of these.
Do you have an iPhone?
Yeah.
One of and the person on the other end has to choose. On an iPhone, you can choose the format which is sent. So for example, in a native format, an iPhone photo is what's called HEIC or something like that. Nobody can read that. If you send an iPhone photo to somebody in its native format, it won't do any good. You have to go to settings and under pictures say you want the format to be JPEG, for example. On the video, you've got to make sure what's sent to you is MP3 or QuickTime. So sometimes the video is sent in an incompatible format with the tools that you have on your computer. So you've got to make sure the other end is sending those to you in a more compatible format.
Okay. Yeah, they're coming from an iPhone into a PC.
Make
So,
sure they go to their settings and they choose most compatible format when it comes to photos and videos.
great. Thank you so much.
Okay, you're welcome. Yeah, Apple has this native format that is great on detail, but nobody else can see it. So what's the point? So the same in the other direction.
And we have about 5 minutes left for a couple more questions.
And Sandy, if you can't find that location of where the format to choose, just email me and I'll send you a picture. I'll send you a file that you can save. Other questions? I thought I heard somebody. Okay, Marcia?
Marcia.
Is this being recorded so I can review it a second time?
Yes, it is. Yeah, it will be posted on YouTube shortly, and then you can go to our website to access it too.
Sounds great. Thank you, Larry. Wonderful job.
Oh, good. Thank you. Yes.
Harley,
Larry, can you do team view so you can see what's on my computer so we can work it through together?
It's been a while since I've done Team Viewer. I can, but sharing your screen on Zoom is the same thing. In
I
terms of,
didn't know you could do that.
well, yeah, I couldn't actually click anything, but we can get you to share your screen so I can watch step by step by step.
Okay.
So did you write your email down? My email?
Yes.
Go ahead and send me an email and we'll figure out a time to do that.
Okay. Not this weekend, next week.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you. This has been wonderful. Let's do it again.
Oh, good. Great.
and don't forget everyone, Larry's here for one-on-one appointments every Monday from 10 a.m. right to, is it 4 p.m. or 3 p.m.?
4.
4 p.m. Yeah, so, usually he's booked up for, a week or two, but, we can usually get you in if you give us 3 weeks notice. But, give a call. You can do half-hour sessions, full-hour sessions.
And the cost is reasonable.
Mhm.
The cost is free, in case y'all aren't aware.
Can't beat that. And before everyone goes, I would like to point out too that we'll have another presentation with Larry called "Getting the Most Out of Your iPhone," and that will be on July 13th. That is a Thursday, and that's at 12 p.m. noon.
And that won't be as
Those
difficult.
of you that have an iPhone can make it.
That'll be easier to follow because won't be so technical.
And also, Larry, I want to say I really appreciate the ability you have to jump between files and folders on multiple formats. I think you did the email, Apple setup, Windows. So there was a lot of different formats you were showing that in there. So very, very impressive. And I'll leave it off for final questions. But before I do that, I just want to thank you for an excellent presentation.
Thanks. Appreciate that. Awesome. All right. Last call for questions. Any questions?
Yeah, would you repeat your email?
Sure. JCCA Larry at iCloud.com. And if some bizarre reason, if that doesn't work, Apple Trainers, APPLE, Trainers, TRAINERS at gmail.com. But the JCCA Larry is easier to remember.
Okay. Well, thank you everyone for coming today. And again, Larry, thank you for delivering an excellent presentation and being so thorough, covering all the different formats and devices. So see everyone next time. Appreciate you all coming.
Thank you, Larry.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.